My dad ruined a family so badly they tried to sue the entire school district, and lost everything. I didn't know he was capable of it. I used to think my dad was the soft kind of strict. He's the vice principal at my high school, and growing up, that meant I was always under a microscope. He wasn't the yelling type. He wielded disappointment like a scalpel, quiet, precise, deadly. You didn't even know you were bleeding until hours later. Our town's small enough that everyone knows your business. My dad's the kind of guy people nod to at the grocery store but also secretly resent. Too polite to call out but too intimidating to mess with. He carries himself like he's always 2 steps ahead, and honestly, he usually is. That's why it caught me off guard when he got involved with them. The Yoders. Everyone knows the Yoders. Entitled doesn't even begin to cover it. The mom, Krista, is the type to film herself at Starbucks if her latte is 5 degrees too cold. The kids are worse, tiny monsters in name-brand hoodies. I shared a bus with them. You learned real quick to keep your headphones in and your head down. But it all came to a head the day Krista decided to scream at our bus driver. A 63-year-old man named Hank who'd driven routes longer than I've been alive. She said he intentionally skipped her house and left her kids stranded in the freezing cold. She wasn't even there when it happened. One of the kids had just refused to come out because it was too early. Hank, bless him, didn't fight back. Just stood there at the school entrance, staring at Krista while she unloaded every Karen phrase from her arsenal. I saw it all, so did about 30 other students. But what I didn't see was my dad, standing just around the corner, watching it go down like a hawk. He didn't interrupt, didn't call security. He just waited until she left, red-faced and proud, dragging her kids into the school behind her like trophies. Later, at dinner, he said, "Some people make a lot of noise right before they dig their own grave." I thought he meant it metaphorically. But the next week, the Yoders filed a complaint with the district. Then they escalated it. A lawsuit. Against Hank, against the school, and even, somehow, my dad. I remember seeing the envelope on the kitchen counter and watching something harden behind his eyes. That was the moment everything shifted. I didn't realize it then. But that lawsuit wasn't just a tantrum. It was a match. And my dad? He'd been collecting gasoline for years. The first time I ever saw my dad lose his cool, it involved Krista Yoder, and a lie that almost wrecked his career. It was 3 years ago, back when her oldest son, Jason, was still in middle school. He got caught with a vape in the bathroom, then shoved a hall monitor when they tried to stop him. My dad had to handle it, being VP. Standard stuff. Suspension, maybe a parent meeting. Nothing life-shattering. But Krista didn't take it like a normal parent. She waltzed into the school like she owned it. Full makeup at 10 a.m., designer purse swinging like a weapon. Said it wasn't a vape. It was an essential oil diffuser for his anxiety. Claimed the hall monitor had manhandled her son, and that the school had a vendetta against her family. She threatened to call the local news. Said she had connections. Then she did something worse. Filed a complaint to the school board, claiming my dad had physically intimidated her in the hallway. I was in the building that day. I know he never touched her, but it didn't matter. There was no camera footage in that hallway. No proof. Just her word against his. The board didn't fire him, but they issued a written reprimand. It went on his permanent record. I remember how quiet he got after that. How he stopped going to staff potlucks. How he came home and sat in the dark without turning on the TV. He told me once, in a rare moment of honesty, that the thing about false accusations isn't just that they hurt, they linger. He said, even if you clear your name, people still wonder. And that wondering, it sticks to your skin. So yeah, when I saw her yelling at Hank this year, I think something inside him cracked. Or maybe it clicked. Maybe he'd been waiting, watching, for the perfect time to return the favor. I didn't know any of this back then. All I saw was my dad eating dinner in silence, then staying up late in his office, writing emails with that cold intensity he usually reserved for school expulsion cases. I asked him once what he was doing. He said, cleaning house. I laughed, thought he meant the literal kind. I didn't realize he meant burning it down, room by room, reputation by reputation. The lawsuit turned into a local circus. What started as a petty bus stop complaint spiraled into full-on war, and we were living inside the blast radius. Krista claimed the school deliberately endangered her children's safety. She said Hank skipped their stop to punish them and that my dad, as vice principal, fostered a culture of systemic bullying. Her exact words. They made the local paper. Front page. I remember the picture. Her standing on her porch, arms folded like she was Rosa Parks. Hank was put on leave, pending investigation. My dad didn't flinch. He said all the right things in public, cooperating fully, respect due process. But I could tell he wasn't playing defense. He was planning. Every night he stayed up past midnight with spreadsheets, old attendance logs, surveillance footage. He even pulled phone records. I didn't understand half of it. Meanwhile, at school, the Yoder kids acted like they were untouchable. Jason swaggered through the halls like a prince. His sister yelled at a teacher during science class for marking her trauma late. No one dared discipline them. Admin didn't want to risk making things worse. Students whispered. Teachers sighed. The rest of us waited, like passengers stuck on a train where someone's pulled the emergency brake. Everything was tense and quiet, but you knew it wasn't over. You just didn't know which direction the explosion would come from. Then the anonymous letters started showing up. Typed notes in teacher mailboxes, little packets of screenshots, emails from Krista to other parents, screenshots from her Facebook mom group, where she bragged about finally putting the school in its place. My dad never said a word about them, but I saw the printer queue on his laptop one night when he stepped away. It had 23 files, all titled Exhibit A, Exhibit B, and so on. I felt sick, not just because it was shady, but because I realized something. My dad didn't want to win. He wanted to crush them, not settle, not clear his name, obliterate them until no one would ever believe another word that came out of her mouth again. And I hated that I agreed with him. The school assembly wasn't supposed to be about them. It was about bullying awareness. But my dad turned it into a public reckoning. It started normally. A couple PowerPoint slides, a student speaker, some awkward clapping. Half the school was half asleep. I sat near the back with my earbuds half in, bored and scrolling. But then my dad stepped up to the mic, and the room shifted. You could feel it. His voice wasn't angry. It was measured, almost gentle. Too gentle. He told a story about a school employee who was verbally attacked by a parent. He talked about false narratives, the power of social media, the danger of letting manipulation masquerade as advocacy. He never said Krista's name, but he didn't have to. Every student, every teacher, every janitor in that auditorium knew who he was talking about. He even pulled up a slide with a redacted screenshot, one of her Facebook posts, blurred but obvious. This is what weaponized entitlement looks like, he said. I remember gasping. A teacher near me actually whispered, "Holy shit." Krista was in the crowd. She'd come for transparency. She stood up, screamed something about defamation, then stormed out with her kids trailing behind her like ducklings. The room went dead quiet. My dad waited until the door shut behind her before continuing like nothing happened. The next day it went viral. A student had recorded the whole thing. It got posted on TikTok, then Twitter, then a local education blog. People in town were split. Half were horrified, said it was unprofessional. The other half said, "Finally, someone shut her up." Krista doubled down. She held a press conference on her lawn, with her kids standing behind her, again like props. Then came the real blow. My dad countersued. Not personally. The district did. For defamation, harassment, and damage to employee morale. He didn't just end the game. He changed the rules mid-play. And somehow, in the middle of all of it, I realized I didn't recognize him anymore. The lawsuit collapsed like wet cardboard. And Krista? She didn't just lose the case. She lost everything. The court dismissed her original claim. The judge said there was insufficient evidence and a pattern of malicious exaggeration. That was the nice version. My dad's compiled evidence didn't just poke holes. It shredded her credibility. Screenshots, audio clips, even a sworn statement from a fellow parent she tried to bribe into lying. Then came the counter-lawsuit settlement. She was forced to pay damages to the district. Hank got reinstated with a public apology from the school board. The Yoders had to move 2 towns over. Word was, Krista's husband finally had enough and left her during the trial. No dramatic announcement, just one day his truck was gone, and it never came back. I should have felt satisfied, vindicated even, but instead I felt hollow. Like I'd watched someone drown and couldn't tell if they'd jumped or been pushed. Krista wasn't a good person, but she was a person. And whatever she'd done, it didn't quite match the level of ruin we brought down on her. At school, it was like someone had lifted a pressure valve. Everyone walked lighter. Teachers started joking again in the halls. Hank came back and got a standing ovation from the freshman class. My dad said, "Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just clears the air." But at home, it was different. He didn't seem happy, just colder, like he'd given some part of himself away to make it happen. I think the part that used to care about being the better man. We stopped eating dinner together. Not out of anger, just absence. He was always working late. Even when I knew he wasn't, I didn't ask where he went. I don't think I wanted to know. I remember once finding a file on his desk labeled contingencies. It had other parent names, notes, complaints. It looked like a war binder. That's when it hit me. Krista wasn't the only one on his radar. She was just the first one who slipped. It's been 9 months, and I still flinch every time someone brings up the school. I don't tell people my last name anymore when I meet them in town. I just say, I go to Lincoln High, and hope they don't ask. My dad never gloated. Never said, "I told you so," or, "She got what was coming." He didn't need to. The silence was loud enough. Every time we passed the empty Yoder house on our way to school, he didn't even glance at it, like it had never existed, like he didn't burn it to the ground brick by brick. He still works late, still keeps files. I think he's waiting for the next person to step out of line. And that scares me more than anything because now I know what he's capable of. And worse, I know I'm capable of standing beside him while it happens. Sometimes I go back and watch the assembly video. Not because I enjoy it, God no, but because I want to remember the look on his face when Krista left the room. It wasn't pride. It wasn't even anger. It was relief. The kind of relief you feel when the noise finally stops, no matter what it costs to silence it. I think about Krista sometimes, about her kids, about how they learned that losing an argument could mean losing your home. I don't think she was innocent, but I don't think she knew what kind of man she was poking either. There are no heroes in this story, no neat endings, just wreckage. Some nights I wonder what it would have been like if my dad had let it go. If he'd just taken the hit, kept his head down and moved on. Maybe we'd still eat dinner together. Maybe he'd still hum to himself while grading papers. But then I remember what he told me once, when I asked why he never just forgave her. Some people only learn when the fire reaches their doorstep. And I make sure it always does.